So let us close our eyes for a moment and with deep love and gratitude connect to Shri Guru. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnanam Jnanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. O Gurudev, you are the one who blesses us with the light of true vision by imparting your divine knowledge on us. We bow to you unlimited times. We thank you for this time together. We also pray for all who might listen to this lecture later on. We pray for our families and all we have in our hearts. And let us remember with love God, Divine Mother, in the form you love the most. With deep love and gratitude. Om Jayanti Mangala Kali Bhadrakali Kapalini Durga Kshama Shiva Dhatri Swaha Swadha Namostute. Bolo Bhaktavatsal Bhagavan Ki Jai. Hari Sharanam, Hari Sharanam, Hari Sharanam. We start our Sanskrit lecture with a short story of a saint that I love. His name is Raidas or Ravidas. You might have heard of him because he was the guru of Mirabai, the great devotee of Lord Krishna. So it is said that Ravidas, he was having a very, very simple job. So he repaired shoes for all kinds of people. And in the traditional Orthodox understanding of classical India, when it comes to the religious beliefs, it was considered impure to touch or to have or to wear even leather. And as Ravidas was dealing with the shoes of so many people, of course, he was dealing with a lot of leather footwear as well, but he was not concerned at all. His guru was a great acharya. His name was Ramananda, and he taught all his disciples that the Lord is really extremely merciful, and if you offer to him whatever you do, he will accept your work as a service to him. So with that mentality, Ravidas did not really care, and he did his work every day with so much simplicity and humility and devotion that he ended up having visions of the Lord after his work one day. And the Lord told him, I'm so pleased because you're doing all of this with so much love and devotion, and you always remember me. You always remember my name. You always have me in your heart when you serve people and their shoes. So I want to bless you. And it is said that the story is a little bit longer, but to make it short, the Lord forced Ravidas to accept riches in his life because he wanted to glorify his love and his devotion. So after some time, when the influential brahmanas, the priests, came to know that Ravidas became so influential and that people came to visit him, and there was constant worship and singing and dancing and prayer and all of that going on in his place with many, many visitors, they were extremely envious, and they went to the local ruler, we could say, of a small kingdom, and they told the king that Ravidas is leading people into the wrong direction. He's doing so many sins. He's doing everything wrong, not according to the scriptures. And now so many people come to him and follow his kirtans and his prayers. So you have to stop that. And the king said, well, what's wrong with him? He's such a nice person. He had heard stories of him helping so many people, serving poor people as well. So the king said, if it's true what you say, I want it to be tested, to be verified. So he had Ravidas and the priests come to his royal court, and there was a divine image of the Lord, we could say, a holy divine stone that was used to worship the Lord. And it was placed in the palace, and it was decorated, and there was arati performed to that stone to really invoke the divine presence. And then the priests and Ravidas were placed in front of that stone. And the king said, now I want both of you, like both parties, to pray to the Lord, and the Lord will reveal himself in some way and will show us what he really thinks of what's actually going on. So the priests, they were really enthusiastic. They started chanting so many Vedic hymns, Vedic prayers, everything in Sanskrit, very complicated with different melodies and notes and endings and beginnings, like really, really complicated. But the Lord did not do anything. So everyone was listening, and the priests were putting more and more and more energy into their recitation of their Sanskrit hymns, but nothing happened. And the king just smiled and looked at Ravidas and nodded his head. And Ravidas started to sing a song in his own language that he had composed himself in very simple words. And he just sang with tears in his eyes. And he said, oh my Lord, who am I to glorify you? You have come and you have shown your mercy to so many of your really great devotees, like Kabir, Surdas, so many who really loved you. And you can do anything. So with these words, these simple words, the stone started moving and ended up in the lap of Ravidas. So the stone was found in the lap of Ravidas because the Lord himself had moved the stone. So we might believe the story or not, but it has a very deep significance for us, because the basic of all our relationship with the divine in the form we love or we choose to worship or devote ourselves to, the basis of that is devotion. And that devotion can be expressed in the language of our own heart. And in that sense, many of the modern masters who came to the West, like Sri Ramakrishna, or who sent their disciples to the West, Lahiri Mahashaya, what he said, Swami Shivananda, what he said, they all said with the disciples that they sent to us in the West, you don't have to adopt a new religion. The main thing is to deepen your relationship with the Lord that you love, the love of your heart. So do that. And in that sense, our little introduction to Sanskrit tonight is not an encouragement to necessarily become a Hindu, but nonetheless, there is really a universal science in those methods of the Vedic tradition that were handed down to us with the masters that came to the West. So we know how asanas, when we move our bodies in the right way, bring the prana in our body in a harmony and into realignment. We know how mudras, when we hold our bodies or certain parts of our bodies, the same thing happens. There is just a scientific method to these processes. And the same holds true for sound, this Vedic sound. So we heard the last time when we were speaking or contemplating on the divine name that in the Vedic revelation, the divine opens his heart of mercy and longing for us through sound. And in the Vedic tradition, that sound is expressed through Sanskrit because it is said that this sound is most exact and represents the sounds in our bodies and also in the macrocosmos. So it really, by listening to revealed prayers or verses, just by connecting to the sound, we receive grace and our consciousness is led inward and upward. So that's why, even though the masters and their disciples, for us in the West, they said, deepen your own religion, like follow your own religion. They also advised, like Lahiri Mahashaya, Sanyal Mahasaya, Guruji, they advise to chant certain prayers, certain texts, especially the Bhagavad Gita. So let us think about Sanskrit texts for a moment, because now later we will talk about the Sanskrit alphabet, the different letters, but just because we open up the storehouse of this knowledge, it doesn't mean that we are entitled to recite or to listen to every Sanskrit text that is out there. So I would like to spend a few minutes on that. There is a specific type of text that is really helpful for us to purify our consciousness, to purify our intellect, our mind, our thoughts, our emotions, and even our sense organs and our body itself. And I'm just trying to classify it. It will become more clear when you really dive into it. But there is, like I said, the masters advised us to listen to or to recite the Bhagavad Gita especially. And the Bhagavad Gita is part of that remembered tradition. It's not the primary revelation of the Vedas, but really a secondary revelation, especially texts of Vedavyas. Vedavyas, you might have heard the name. He's an incarnation of the divine in the Vedic understanding. And the story of his consideration is really elaborated in the Bhagavatam. So before the beginning of the times in which we live, when texts had to be written down because our memory would decrease and all these different symptoms of decay were visible in the human condition, Vedavyas took birth and he encapsulated the same truth of the Veda in new texts that anyone can, with reverence and humility, approach. So the main texts are, first he wrote the Mahabharata, and in the Mahabharata, the Bhagavad Gita is a main part. Another main part of the Mahabharata is the Vishnu Sahasranam, which we will cover tonight also several times. And those two texts, those two parts of the Mahabharata, they are really for anyone. And he wrote these texts with that intention. He wanted to create a new basis for people where the same knowledge is much more comprehensive, much more universal, and much more accessible, also in the sound vibration. So the Bhagavad Gita, the Vishnu Sahasranam from the Mahabharata, and after that, he wrote the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is a Purana. So that Purana he also wrote literally for anyone and everyone. And we will also hear verses from this text later on. So in all these texts, there is a classical metric and rhythm to the verses that he composed. And that is really how we can feel whether a Sanskrit text is advisable for us or whether we should be a little bit not comprehensive, but attentive and careful in approaching that text. There is a certain number of syllables, so we will learn about that later on. We will see examples of that. And when we see that and we feel the rhythm and the metric of the text, we can feel, nice. That is part of those texts that are really advisable for us to recite and to listen to. So I would say, just as a first orientation, again, Bhagavad Gita, Vishnu Sahasranama, and Srimad Bhagavatam. Those are Sanskrit works that we can, with humility and reverence, really dive into and enjoy. And the opposite, we could say, of that is, I mentioned it already, to make a distinction, to differentiate. The opposite of that is the primary revelation of the Vedas. So we will hear, or you will hear, when you listen to Sanskrit in the internet or in a temple during a ceremony, it is very complex. The rhythm is not one rhythm that goes throughout the hymn. It is changing. The, how to say, the height of the notes is changing. It's going up and down a lot. It's like a song, like a music, very melodious at times, but also very complex and complicated and changing. So that is how Vedic hymns, Shruti, primary revelation from the Vedas, are composed. And those texts are not really advised to, it's not really advised to recite them without proper teaching, without proper initiation, without proper guidance. Otherwise, they may cause harm to us. The same holds true for tantric texts. So Bhagavad Gita, Vishnu Sahasranam, Srimad Bhagavatam, they are from the Vedic text corpus. And Tantra is another tradition, we could say, that is much more direct and much more powerful in its, in what it does to the consciousness and to the body of the one who practices it. So with tantric texts, usually there is also an initiation required. Now, besides these texts that I mentioned, Bhagavad Gita, Vishnu Sahasranam, Srimad Bhagavatam, there are, of course, others that are nice to chant and that are powerful and that are advised to chant by certain teachers. But in that respect, we should honor and follow the tradition in which we are initiated. And we should try to follow an authentic lineage. So in our case, with Gurudev, we all might have heard that he loved Divine Mother. And you also see with Gurudev and Guruji, they have this dot in the middle of their forehead. So that is a sign of worshipping Divine Mother. And a part of that worship of Divine Mother for Gurudev was reciting the Devi Mahatmya. So in the version that Guruji wrote, I have it here with me. It's that red text. You might have seen it. Guruji wrote a deep commentary on it, and he also told about his experiences with Gurudev of this text, because it is a text that in our tradition is important because Gurudev had so much love for it, and he was kind of initiated into it. His previous guru, Bijoy Krishna, was also worshipping Divine Mother with his disciples. So you will also see when you study the Devi Mahatmya, some parts of it, the four hymns of the text, they are really open for anyone. Guruji writes that also in the introduction. But other parts of it also require an initiation. So we should always be aware of that, you know? Sanskrit is very, very powerful, and it's beautiful that it's so powerful. But as Gurudev said, maintain implicit faith, love, and loyalty. We should be loyal and humble and have reverence for this power of Sanskrit and follow it in the right way, and then we will be benefited. And we can spread this knowledge also with others who are practicing yoga. I always encourage to do that because if we go to yoga studios nowadays, there's so much going on which is not really beneficial when people are not connected to an authentic tradition without being initiated. They just repeat any mantra they like or they listen to on YouTube or anywhere or in a podcast. And mantras, it's the same with mantras. Mantras are very, very powerful. There's a great saint who lives in India, even now in Puri, Jagat Guru Swami Nishchalanandaji. Guruji and him, they have a very loving relationship. And he always says, how can these people just repeat any mantra? A mantra is more powerful than an atomic bomb. That vibration is so subtle, but it's really, really powerful. So people have to become aware of that in the West. And it is like medicine with a very specific potency, a very specific, yeah, what it does to us. So we should be aware of that. And we should talk about that to others as well if we come across it. At least that's my conviction nowadays in the West. So how can we discriminate? Like, how can we find out what is a mantra? A mantra is always structured in a very similar way. I spoke about that when we spoke about the divine name last time, because the divine name itself is open to anyone. But a mantra is, there is an om added to it at the beginning, and then there is namo, or there is a word, the divine name, and then namaha. And it is the name, the divine name itself is also put into another case because you bow down to the divinity. And that is a process of making this divine name much more powerful and turning it into a mantra that is really more powerful, like than an atomic bomb, what Jagat Guru said. So this is how we can see this is a mantra. And it's the same, like with tantric texts or with Vedic texts. We are not excluded from that per se, but we should take initiation into a mantra and also from an authentic lineage. And in our case, we can take initiation into a mantra from all the Indian teachers that travel in the West. In India, it's a custom that people ask for a mantra during initiation. So we can also be aware of that and make use of that opportunity if we want to repeat a mantra in our life. So this aspect of humility and reverence for Sanskrit, there is one more aspect of it that I want to just touch upon, and that is purity. So I have a friend who is a monk, in another tradition. And his guru, he would also he would always make fun of people in the West. He would also travel a lot throughout Europe and America and South America. He was a guru of devotion to Lord Krishna. So when he came to the West, he would always scold people and tell them, "You behave like animals. You don't know how to go to the toilet. You don't know how to eat. You don't know how to wash yourself." So this aspect of purity, physical purity, is something that the Vedic tradition um, it's a very integral part of Vedic tradition. So you will never see any monk from India recite a Vedic prayer or the Bhagavad Gita or the Vishnu Sahasranam or the Bhagavatam in an impure state. What does that mean? After taking food, to wash your mouth or to brush your teeth before reciting Sanskrit, sacred verses. When you go and you sweat a lot, or your dirts are really, you haven't changed them for a while, you will never see anyone in India advise you to recite Sanskrit in that situation. So your clothing should be nice, should be fresh. So we might smile at that and think, well, this is, childish. We are yogis, we are beyond that. But really, these are aspects that help us to elevate our mind. And it's not to be, judgmental or critical or full of self-hatred. It's not about that. It's just about bringing yourself into a state of being really receptive. And yeah, to just be in a clean state physically enhances our practice of Sanskrit and is an expression of our humility and reverence. Because, and with this I want to close this little introduction, this language is really divine. Sanskrit is divine. It is called the language of the gods. It is just to repeat that one more time, those who practice Kriya Yoga, the higher Kriyas, they know that it is an exact representation of the vibration in our body and of the cosmos. And it is really a sound that we create that has direct influence on the energy within us and around us, and thereby also direct influence on matter itself, like the reality we exist in. So it purifies us, it heals us, and many of the texts that we come across, the Bhagavad Gita, Vishnu Sahasranam, and Bhagavatam included, they are really held in the Vedic tradition with so much reverence that people consider them to be the divine itself. So the Bhagavad Gita was spoken by Sri Krishna, and it is written in other parts of the scriptures that it is so sacred because it is the vibration that the Lord Himself spoke. It's not like the Bible that we have now in the West that was translated so many times and again translated and again readjusted, but it's the original word of the Lord. The Vishnu Sahasranam, they are the names of the Lord. They are non-different from the Lord. And the Bhagavatam is like Sri Krishna himself, that vibration. Just like with the Devi Mahatmya that we shortly touched upon, they say that the Devi Mahatmya is non-different from Divine Mother. So with this understanding, let us close our eyes for just a short moment and offer this little introduction to Sri Guru, to Gurudev, to Divine Mother, to the Lord, with love and gratitude, and praying also for all who might listen to this later on, and praying for ourselves so that we all may be benefited by this knowledge. and we all might approach in the West Sanskrit with humility and with clarity so that it really benefits us. Om. Amen. Jai Guru.